kick it off. So good afternoon. I apologize for being the next thing you get to listen to right after lunch. So we'll try and keep it interactive and make sure that we keep you, get you some interesting facts so that we'll keep you involved. So I'm with Veeam. My name is Gaylord Friend. My compatriot here, Neil Condon. We're the SE Tech team for Veeam in Northeast. And today we're going to talk about Management Suite. Now, how many folks are familiar with Veeam? And how many folks are familiar with backup and replication? And how many with Veeam 1? All right, we need to fix that. So backup and replication and Veeam 1 combined are what we call Management Suite. We are imminently going to release a new version of both products. That is going to be version 6.5. And with that release, we're going to have some new integration between the two products, as well as some new features for each of them separately. So that's mostly what we're going to chat about today. We've got about 311 slides we need to get through, and we've got 50 minutes, so we're going to start banging this out. No, I'm just kidding. We're actually going to do just demos today. So we're going to actually let you see the software, see it in action, see what it can do for you in your environment, so we can go ahead and kill that. So what we wanted to do today is kind of a day in the life. So some of the things that as a virtualization administrator you may be struggling with day to day. A couple of things, so data protection. And more importantly than data protection is data recovery, right? So I want to back it up, I want to replicate it, but the most important thing is to be able to recover that when I actually need to get that data back. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Veeam 1, which is monitoring, reporting, overall data management. So I need visibility into my virtual infrastructure. I want to actually see what's going on, what's broken, what's working well, how long is it going to work well. So today I'm great, right? But next month I know I'm going to add 50 new virtual machines. What's that going to do to my environment? Do I need to add data storage capacity? Do I need to add memory, CPU, a new host altogether? So we'll talk about that as well. So day in the life. You come in the morning, the first thing you're going to want to do is check on your environment and see what's going on, right? So here you can see this is actually all sitting on my laptop. So in my situation, I'm in really bad shape, right? I got a lot of problems going on here. So this gives you this kind of the eye in the sky view of am I healthy, am I not healthy? So red, green, yellow. Green is good, red is bad. Yellow is, you can ignore it maybe or not. It's up to you. So in this case, if you look at the errors that we're seeing there, right below I've got all the alarms, both by latest alarms, as well as alarms by object, which is new. So now I can actually see who's my worst offender. So I've got the most alarms that I have are for that specific object. So I might want to start with him and drill in and see actually what's going on with that guy. So you can see here the error is state of the data store is not equal to accessible. So it gives you not only what is the error, explains it to you, it tells you what probably caused it, and it also gives you some potential resolution for the issue. So what do I go and check when I have this problem? So it's not just, here's a big red flashing light, danger Will Robinson, what do I do now? It's actually, this is your problem, this is probably how you're going to fix it. So it gives you a place to start. This is also, you can configure this yourself. So if you want to add in additional information based on your corporate policy or procedures, you can do that. So if this can actually say something as simple as, it's a storage problem, call Bob, he's the storage guy, here's his extension. So you can add those things into the knowledge base as well.
It's linked to the KPI.
Yep, so we also have connectors out to known knowledge base articles. So if it's a VMware problem that they've written an article for, we'll link you out to that as well. So it's not just our own internal tech experts that have written this knowledge base, but it's also linked out to VMware and the rest of the world. So if there's a relevant article somewhere, we'll plug into that as well. This gets updated every version. Again, there's always changes, best practices are updated, new versions, so 5.1 for example. 6.5, both versions, backup and Veeam 1, support vSphere 5.1. So we have that support now, imminently. So this version is supposed to be out by the end of the month. It also supports Hyper-V 2012. So is anybody looking at Hyper-V today? All right. So the good thing about having Veeam as your product of choice for your virtual infrastructure is it supports both, right? So you have your VMware information, you also can get your Hyper-V information in the same interface, which we're actually seeing here. So these are my VMware VMware infrastructure. So these are my VMware hosts, 1.4 and 1.5. And then below that, you'll see this guy's not actually turned on, so that's why he's not responding. But he is a Hyper-V host as well. Excellent. So first thing I'll do is come in and check this. Obviously, I'm in bad shape. I'm going to have a really bad day. The next thing I'd like to do, it's getting close to the end of the month. I want to make sure that I'm checking on those virtual machines to make sure. When the guy told me, hey, yeah, you can virtualize my application, but if you do, I'm going to need 12 CPUs and I'm going to need 300 gigs of RAM. You can now go back and check and make sure that he's actually using that, right? So we're going to look for over-provisioned virtual machines. So Veeam lays out their reporting based on report packs. So you can see each of them here, they're organized under these folders in particular areas. So in this case, we're going to look at optimization, and we want to see how many virtual machines do I have oversized in my environment. So pretty straightforward to pick the template. I can make the interval different. I can set it up how I want it to actually look for me personally in my environment, and then I can preview that. Now, if you like the preview, once you get the settings set the way you like them, then you just come in and say, okay, save that as a report. It'll put it into that upper section as an ad hoc report for you, and you can just click on it going forward. You don't have to reset that configuration each time. Did you do that? So as you can see here, I actually have an oversized virtual machine. And for the detail, it's saying that it is over-allocated for RAM. So in reality, you're not going to take 1 gig of RAM and allocate it down to 0.6 gigs of RAM, but if you had 20 gigs of RAM and it's telling you you're only using 4, then it would also tell you can reduce that by 16 gigs. So again, it goes out and checks for those over-provisioned virtual machines based on trending over time. So if over time I've got 6 CPUs and I only use 3 of them, I never peak above 3, it'll actually tell you to reduce it to 3. So let's say most of the time you're running at 2, but occasionally you peak to 3, it won't tell you to take it to 2 because then it wouldn't be able to handle the load. So it takes a look at all of that information over time to give you those statistics. Does that make sense? Is anybody doing this kind of thing right now with your virtual infrastructure? Would you like to be able to? It'd be nice to be able to reclaim some of those resources, right? Me personally, I didn't realize that if you have extra virtual CPUs, I'm like, it's virtual, who cares, right? Well, you do care because each of those virtual CPUs takes a slice of your physical CPU, whether it's used or not. So if you've got 4 virtual CPUs, each of those gets a quarter of your actual physical CPU. So it does matter, even if they're not used in the virtual infrastructure.
You can actually slow them down.
Yeah.
Lower the CPU weight.
Yes, exactly. Which we can also find here for you in Monitor. So all those statistics, all those metrics that you can think of, so like that one, for example, read-write latency on your data stores, CPU ready, all of those different metrics we can report and do monitoring and thresholds for you. So you can actually say, if I hit 80% on this particular metric, then I want to have an alarm set for that. So we give you best practices, what we feel is going to work in your environment. You can obviously change those if your environment is different. You need a different threshold, you can set that. For example, if I'm doing QA and development, I may not care so much if I hit 85% on my utilization there, but if I hit 85% on my production side, that's a big deal, right? So you can very easily set those different parameters for your thresholds. Excellent, so we found that we have one oversized virtual machine, we got to fix that. Another thing is, as far as storage space is free, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so storage space is not free, and you always need more of it, right? So one of the things that's nice is to be able to go out and check for orphan virtual machines. Extra garbage files that are sitting on your data stores that are doing nothing, that otherwise how would you find them, right? So you can run a report right here that says, find my garbage files. So I went into a proof of concept the other day, and the guy, one of the very first things he was interested in was running this report. So I'm like, yeah, sure. So we run the report, we're chit-chatting, going back and forth, and then the report pops up. In his environment, the number was so big I had to actually look at the breakdown so that I could figure out, like, what is that number? It was almost a petabyte of storage. And he's like, there's no way, that's wrong. Like, okay, so he goes and he starts looking in those different storage spaces where it said that there was that much. It was true. He was wasting almost a petabyte of storage. Now, this software is a lot cheaper than that. So right away, he'd gotten his value out of just the proof of concept in that situation. So here you can see it actually found some garbage space that I could free up, so I can go out and it gives me the list of exactly where those files are and what they are. So I can dig right into the data store and then just clean that up for the orphan files. So yeah, my demo, I guess I'm not very careful. Even in my demo, which is on my laptop with a handful of virtual machines, I'm not very good at cleaning up after myself. So you can imagine what this is like in your own environment if it's not something that you're checking for regularly. Awesome. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
What would be an example of a garbage file?
So in a situation where you're deleting virtual machines or you copy any files out to your data store that are not associated with a virtual machine, those are considered garbage files. So if you delete a virtual machine and something quirks, blips, and you wind up with a VMDK that doesn't get deleted as part of that process, but now the virtual machine is gone for whatever reason, the VMDK that's left behind will never be associated with anything, so it's extra. And you're never going to see it unless you go specifically look for it. And even if you see it, you may not associate it with the fact that that virtual machine's gone. So this will go out and find all those for you. That make sense? Cool. You have to delete them so far. So, yep, we'll find them, report them for you, and then you'd go through and just clean those up individually. Yep. And you may want to do that because what we consider to be a garbage file might be, your classic music collection, and you don't want it actually to get deleted. So. All right, and now that I've got this all cleaned up, I actually want to go out and I want to check my capacity and see, how much longer can I last in my environment before I have to buy a new CPU, new hosts, new memory, add on storage capacity. So I can very easily do that by going into capacity planning. Now, how many folks have seen this presentation before or something similar, demos? All right, so this could potentially be the very first time you're seeing the capacity planning. And for those of you who haven't seen this presentation, this is the first time you're seeing the capacity planning. So capacity planning, you'll notice there's several different reports we can run here. The capacity planner itself, which we'll show you, actually tells you how long can I last with the existing CPU, existing memory, and existing storage before I have to add on. And that's based on your trending over time, which is cool, right? What if my trending over time is not reality? Like what if I had a project where I had to add 50 new virtual machines in the next 3 months? We can also cover that for you. So you can tell us, I want a virtual machine that looks like this specific virtual machine in my environment, or I want a virtual machine that I can design. I want to say it has 4 CPUs and this much RAM and so on, and then model that out to see how much longer you'll last after you add those additional virtual machines. So if you want to go ahead and run the capacity planner. So here you got a lot of options as far as what you want your limits to be for it to say, how much longer am I going to last. CPU utilization, 80%, memory utilization, 80%, read-write per data store. So it's not just telling you capacity on your data stores, but how long will I last, my current trend for my read-write, so IOPS. Yes?
Did that pull in the information from your logs, or is it from the time the product is installed?
So when you install Veeam, it's going to do the initial data collection and pull all the data that it can get from vCenter. So whatever you're storing there, it's going to use that as its initial start point, and then after that, we'll keep our own data going forward. So yeah, so it's trending of whatever's there when we start, and then over time, we'll keep that data for as long as you want. There's a default setting, is it a year? 10 months. I think it's 10 months. Anyway, there's a default setting, but you can make it more than that if you want to keep more data. Excellent. So capacity planning wise, so again, I'm not really growing my environment a lot, so CPU, I can last to infinity and beyond. Data store utilization, 108 days before I'm going to run out based on my current trending. So for the data store side, I've actually been adding in data there. And interestingly enough, it hasn't been VM, so it's keeping track of the overall capacity. So that is my capacity planning report. So new to the 6.5 release, we can actually, yes? It is licensed per physical socket on your ESXi hosts or your Hyper-V hosts. So everything, that's a good question. Everything I'm talking about, every one of these features, functionality, all the different capabilities, it's all based on that socket price. So there's no additional add-ons. And on top of that, a lot of the stuff that we're doing now is free. So some of the things we'll be touching on today, the SAN capabilities, the Veeam Exchange Explorer are actually free. You can use them with the free version of Veeam software. So yeah, but it's per socket, and everything we're talking about, you get included. There's also individual pricing, so you can do Veeam 1 and backup and replication separately, or you can do them as a management suite and get a break on the pricing for the bundle. Excellent. So in the new release, we're going to be able to also monitor not just your VMware environment and your Hyper-V environment, but also your backup environment. So we can take a look at monitoring for my data protection. So if you want to click on the summary. So pretty much everything that we've been talking about for your VMware infrastructure, CPU, memory, all of that. You can also report for your backup environment. So I can look at the size of my repositories. How long am I going to last before I run out of space on the repository? How many parallel streams can I afford for a specific proxy server? So there's a lot of monitoring, reporting. If my jobs fail, it can tell me that. If my proxy's overrun, it can tell me that. So again, all of that monitoring, alerting, reporting capabilities that you've seen on the virtual infrastructure, we're now doing it for our own backup infrastructure as well. So you have, again, the three options now. VMware, Hyper-V, and the backup infrastructure you can report and monitor against. So it can tell you, you're about to run out of capacity on your repository. You might want to add space or, spread that out. Scalability-wise, you've hit a limit on the number of jobs that your proxy can process. So you might want to add an additional proxy. So again, it gives you some planning and reporting capabilities on your actual backup infrastructure as well. So in this case, my E drive is my backup repository, and you can see that I've used about 30% of that, and I've got another 70% to go before I start to run out of space. So hands earlier, we saw a lot of backup and replication. We didn't see a whole lot of Veeam 1. So this is the marriage of the two together. So for the folks that have not seen Veeam 1 before, I mean, is this helpful? Is this something you're looking for in your environment? Would this be useful to be able to do garbage files and see what your CPU utilization is? And so again, it's on the monitoring reporting side, it's visibility. I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know how many garbage files I have. How do I figure that out? Awesome. So the other thing I'm going to check is my backup jobs from last night. Whoops. Yeah, so there's my jobs last run. Again, in my demo environment here, I don't let them run on their own because that would be bad. If I don't know the next time I fire this up where my demos are at. So in this case, it's not showing you a lot of info, but if I had been running jobs regularly, this is where I would see what do they look like. If you go back to the summary, I can actually see on the dials jobs by status. So it's going to give me my successful, failed warnings. Again, so red is bad, green is good, and yellow is somewhere in between. The job warnings for us, the jobs they finished, but they had an issue, something you want to at least take a look at and see what's going on with it. So I can see that here. I can also see that obviously in the backup console. I can see it in the Enterprise Manager server. So a couple different places I can actually take a quick peek and see where the jobs are. Again, if I'm already looking at this first thing in the morning to see what's going on with my environment, then it makes a lot of sense for me to just double check the jobs here as I go through. All right, so enough of monitoring, reporting, overviewing, getting ready for my monthly meetings, all that good stuff. The other things I need to do are some basic data protection features and functionality, right? So how many folks do recoveries in your environment? You restore things. Bless you. So you restore, what do you normally restore? Entire virtual machines, individual files, individual items? Okay. Hopefully you don't do a lot of restoring entire virtual machines. If you do need to, we can definitely take care of that in a couple of different kind of interesting ways. But for the individual items, let's take a look at what it is to do an individual file restore for Veeam. So this is the actual backup console. You can see here we've got several backup jobs. We've also got several replication jobs. You can also do file copy, so fast SCP, I can set up jobs to copy data from anywhere to a data store, from a data store to a data store, or from a data store to anywhere. So that's the technology we released when we very first started the company And it's free. The Fast SCP is still free today, so you can use that. A lot of folks use it in their environment to move data around, including live virtual machines. So if I want to copy a live virtual machine and put it somewhere, I can do that while it's still running. Backups, you'll notice here that I have my virtual machines, so that's where I can actually look individually at the virtual machines that I'm backing up and protecting. I have files, so this is where I would look at if I'm doing actual file copy jobs with FastSCP. Backup infrastructure, so these are my managed servers, my proxies, backup repositories. So a proxy is just a data mover. I should tell you what they are before I start talking about them. Proxy is a data mover. That's actually going to grab the data, compress it, dedupe it, and put it out to a repository. So the repository is just your target. The repository can be any storage that the proxy server can see. It can be iSCSI attached, it can be local disk, it can be CIFS or NFS. So any storage that you can target from that proxy server, we can actually write to for our data storage. Sure backup. So if I want to make absolutely certain that my backups are recoverable, I think it should be called sure recovery, because this is going to go out and it's actually going to test the backup, and it's going to do that by restoring it. Once it restores it, it's going to do a VMware heartbeat on the virtual machine. It's going to do an OS ping to make sure the OS responds, and it's even going to do an application port ping. So if I have Active Directory, for example, it's going to ping the LDAP port and make sure that Active Directory responds. So not just that that server is recoverable and the data is consistent on it, but that the application actually responds to me. So sure backup / recovery. Virtual labs are where I would set up to do item level recoveries. So we're going to actually do an item level recovery from Exchange for you. And we're going to have somebody time us. We want to see how long it actually takes us to do a message level recovery from Exchange from an image-based backup with no agents. Is everybody aware that we don't use agents? No agents on your virtual machines, no agents in your virtual infrastructure. So everything we're doing through the APIs to accomplish all this. It is hardware agnostic, absolutely. So VMware again and Hyper-V as well. And then you'll notice there's a new tab if you're familiar with the interface, SAN infrastructure. So what this is I can now actually add HP storage, so left-hand networks or their the VSA, I can add into this interface and I can do a couple of cool things with it. I can manage the snapshots, so I can actually set up regular snapshots against their storage. The nice thing is when I add the storage here and I give it the authentication, that's it, I'm done. So from then I can create a snapshot schedule. I can also use any snapshots that I find on that storage to do all of these recovery options that we're talking about. So I can do an instant recovery from that snapshot on the HP storage that I didn't even create or that I did create, the same as I can from my backup files. So when we do our backup, we compress and dedupe that and we put that down on storage. In this case, we're just going to look at that HP SAN and say, show me your snapshots, pick a snapshot, and from that snapshot I can do file level recoveries, I can do instant recoveries. So again, I can do all these different level of recoveries directly out of the same interface that I do from my backup file. So it just simplifies everything on the SAN side. Awesome. So now I'll let you do your magic with a individual file level recovery. So when you get down to restoring, you'll notice there's a lot of options here. So I can do an instant VM recovery, which we're going to try. Hopefully my demo infrastructure will hold up. We can just restore an entire virtual machine. We can restore a part of a virtual machine. So if I want to restore a VMDK or if the VMX becomes corrupt, I can restore just that. I can restore a file from any operating system that sits on VMware. And I can also restore, what did I miss? I can restore an individual file from any replica that I've created. So if I have several snapshots on the replica side and I have a backup each night, I can restore from any of those point in times. So from the console, I figure out which server I want to restore from. I select which backup, so I could have multiple backup restore points here. In this case, I've got one, so we'll use that one. I can restore to the original. Is this a file level?
No, I did. I think that's full.
Oh, instant recovery. Okay, I'm sorry. So in this case, I'm going to do a instant recovery, and instant recovery actually takes the virtual machine. The backup file gets presented to vSphere From that backup file, we say, okay, that looks like an NFS data store. Here's a virtual machine. I want you to register it and start it. So it's instant because it doesn't actually move any data. It just registers that virtual machine. vSphere thinks that our backup file is a data store, and it runs it against the backup file. So we never change the data in your backup file. We run it as a snapshot, so the redo logs are where all the changes are stored. But that gives us the ability to recover a virtual machine that's 5 gig in size or 50 gig in size in the same amount of time. As fast as it boots up, it's back up and running. So we're going to take a look at that. I can restore it to the original location, so if that server dies and I delete it, I can say put it right back where it was. Or in this case, I'm going to restore it to a different location because it still exists. So it's going to go out and it's going to determine where in the environment I can put that. In this case, I have one host, so it's going there. I have to give it a different name because that server still exists. I can redirect the redo logs to a different storage if I want. I'll leave them there because I wanted to be able to migrate it when I'm done. Just because I can. So we're going to tell vSphere, here's a data store. We're going to tell it, here's a virtual machine. It's going to register it, and now it's going to start it for us. So this is a full virtual machine recovery. Is somebody timing this? So that's my demo SQL 1 instant, and it just started up. You can stop timing now. So as fast as that virtual machine finishes its boot up process, it's right back in business. So if I lose that virtual machine, it gets corrupt for whatever reason, I do an instant recovery, and then the users can go back to using it almost immediately. What happens after that? So I got some options. In this case, I'm going to stop publishing that and get rid of it, so it'll tear all that back down, and the backup files will not be changed. If you're in an environment where you actually have this problem and you want to put that back into production, it's up at the top, right there. So I can say migrate to production. If you have storage vMotion and vMotion in your environment, it'll use those to do the migration. So it'll say on this NFS data store, which is actually our backup file, I'm going to take that and I'm going to move it over to my production storage. So it'll put that virtual machine right back into production without stopping the virtual machine again. If you don't have storage vMotion and vMotion, we'll use our own technology to do the same thing. So we can migrate and copy the memory. So we'll pause the virtual machine, copy the memory, and then we'll start it back up once it's back on the production side. So same thing whether you have those licenses or not. In this case, we're going to stop publishing, and it'll just clean it all up for us. Hopefully. So that's an instant recovery. We talked a lot about backup. Backup is great for recovering individual items. So we talked about that's most of what you do. Replication, on the other hand, is really great for a site level recovery. So I'm cruising along fine at my production site. All of a sudden, I get a power outage. I need to switch over to my DR site. So if I've been replicating to the DR site, it's very easy to fail over to a replica. So in this case, I have a replica of a server, a SQL server that I've been creating and sending to my DR site. I've had a failure at my production site. This is the process to actually fail over to it. There you go. So it's going to take that SQL server, it's going to fail it over to my alternate, to my replica of the same server. Now replication is scheduled, so on my schedule it's going to go out, it's going to grab whatever changes there are from the production virtual machine, and it's going to copy just those change blocks to the alternate site with the replica. Now between those two sites, we'll use our proxies to actually optimize that traffic. So it dedupes and compresses it, it optimizes the IP traffic between the sites. Once it's on the other side, it'll actually uncompress and undedupe it and apply those changes to the DR copy of that virtual machine. So again, it's optimizing traffic between your sites. One of my prospects the other day did a comparison with our software to do not a replica, but an actual backup. It took 8 hours to pull it across the wire, so a full backup of that 250 gigs of data. The competition that they were trying took 13 hours. So again, it's optimizing that traffic between your sites to make sure that you can get your data replicated across in a timely manner. Now, our company, before this version, we had attempted to do replication of our own data from Europe to Columbus, Ohio. We weren't able to accomplish it. There wasn't enough time in the day to finish the replication job. With this version, we're now doing that in 7 or 8 hours. So we are able to actually accomplish multiple replicas during a day, where before we couldn't do any at all. So it's now actually failed over. If you want to take a look in the vCenter client. So there's my replica, now up and running. So yes?
Is that feature part of the software or is that an add-on?
It is part of the software. So for that same socket price, everything I'm talking about, you get all of it. So it's not only backup, but it is also replication. And the reason for that is we feel like a full data protection philosophy includes both. All right, so I want to back up. I want to be able to archive my backups. I want to be able to go back in time to a period. I want to recover individual items or application items. For a replica, I want to fail over and I want to be back up and running as fast as I possibly can. So that's, you know, 2 different sides of the coin for overall data protection. So yeah, so it's all, everything I'm talking about is all part of the product. Cool, right?
How do you do a SQL backups, like Exchange? That's probably my most concern.
Yep.
aspect of the
And that's a great question. So the reason to ask the question is because for those applications, you want consistent data, right? If I just take a snapshot of that server, I may get good data, but I probably won't. I'll be able to recover up to a point, but some data is going to get lost or even corrupt. So for any of your applications that are VSS aware, we'll use VSS, Active Directory, Exchange, Microsoft SQL, anything that's VSS compliant, we'll use VSS to actually put it in a consistent mode, and then we'll do a snapshot, and then we'll release the VSS, and then we'll do our backup. When we finish that, we release the VMware snapshot. If it's not VSS compliant, then we can still use VMware tools to do a pre-freeze post-thaw script. So for example, if you have Oracle on Linux, you can do a pre-freeze script, use RMAN to actually go in, put it into a hot backup mode, and take a snapshot of it, and then you thaw it immediately after. When we finish with the snapshot, we just release the snapshot. Does that answer the question? Excellent. Good question. Yeah, it's important.
Basically, what you're going to be doing for Linux as well, because you don't have VSS in Linux, you're going to go out there, you're going to take a snapshot of the machine.
Yep. So
And then how do I restore granularly out of that snapshot?
So on the Linux side, for a file level recovery,
File level?
yeah, we can do that directly. So we'll actually, you just go into the interface, say restore from other OS, and it'll give you the wizard. You browse through it, pick what you want. If it's an application on top of Linux, you'll use virtual labs. So I'll actually set up a virtual lab that has the Linux server with the application and any authentication requirements. So I can put multiple servers in the virtual lab. I'll do an instant recovery to boot all those up, and then I can use the application tools, so the actual Linux tools, to go in and pull out the items. So like MySQL on Linux, for example, I would use MySQL tools to get individual items or parts of a database or those kinds of things. Yeah. Awesome.
I think I messed up, because we should have done the file level. I don't want to write that instance. So you want to do a file now?
Actually, you know what? We'll do it as part of X.
Okay.
So,
What
all
do you
right.
use for data storage, this data store here? I look at this and what I see is you're going out to your VMware data stores. Does this mean that I'm going to be doing all of my backups using this product to my VMware data stores? Do I have the opportunity to get this data out to my backup data store? which is
I
my
would-
favorite disk?
I would highly recommend that you don't set your environment up like my laptop. So the last place you want to put your backup data is on your VMFS data stores. So we can put the backup data on anything that the proxy or the backup server can see. So we can do CIFS, NFS, we can do direct local storage if it's a physical server, because this could also be a physical server, the backup server itself. We can do iSCSI attached, SAN attached if it's HBA fiber. So we can put it anywhere that the backup server can see, and again, I wouldn't suggest that you put it there. Yeah, no. This is purely for demo purposes. I wouldn't do my backups to the same storage that your data stores are sitting on either. That's kind of chicken and the egg.
I've been wondering why my VMware infrastructure's been complaining lately.
Exactly. Why is it so slow from 8 at night to 2 in the morning?
You want to undo the failover?
Yep. So in this case, we're going to undo the failover. And I love the interaction, the questions. Please, that's your time. I want to make sure you get all the information that you actually need. And we can veer off of this in any direction you want to go. So in this case, I'm going to undo the failover, which means I'm going to throw away those changes. So this would be like if I was testing my failover, and I say, okay, go ahead and failover. I can look at it. I can log into it. I can make sure it works. And when I'm done with it, I just say undo failover. It throws away all those changes. Now, on the flip side, if I fail over and I want to maintain those changes, I will do a fail back. So let's say I fail over to my alternate site. I run for 3 hours or 3 days, whatever it may be. At the end of that time period, all the changes while I was running over there, I want to maintain those. So if I do a fail back, it actually takes those changes, it will apply them to the production inside. And if that virtual machine that I failed over from is still there, it'll just do the changes. So it'll figure out which blocks have changed over here in the last 3 hours, and it'll put them back on the other side, and it'll start that guy back up. So it actually fails back for you. Now when I do that fail back, if I look at this guy and there's something wrong, I can always undo the fail back as well. So you have plenty of options to go back and forth. The other thing to keep in mind is when you fail over in that kind of situation, that scenario, I don't want to be down there, fat fingering the IP address scheme, or I don't want to be changing my virtual networks on the fly. I can set all that up ahead of time. So the software will actually change, so your production IP scheme is different than your DR IP scheme. Your production virtual networks are potentially different than your DR virtual networks. So when I set that virtual machine up as a replica, I can say I want to use this IP scheme on the DR side, and I want to use a different virtual network. So when it fails over, it sets all that up for you. So when you look at this machine over here, it's going to be running with a different IP scheme and a different virtual network. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it'll take care of all that for you, so you don't have to worry about trying to do it when it's critical to get it done, right? All right.
What's next?
Let's do VAX. So we have UAIR, right? So UAIR is Universal Application Item Level Recovery. That's where we talked about earlier. I build a virtual lab, I put my application into it, and I can pull out individual items from that. Exchange, SQL, Microsoft Active Directory.
I'm picturing this as being kind of like this little entity that we have set up where we got this bunch of virtual machines that would be stored from our backups in my VMware infrastructure, and now I'm going to communicate between them. However, I don't want them on my production network because I don't want everything else communicating between them.
That's a good question.
That's a great whiteboard question. So, what?
I got a permanent magic marker.
Just put it right on the wall. There's a lot of moving parts to that question, and if it's okay, I'll catch up with you. We'll either talk about it at the end, or I'll catch up with you at the end, and we'll draw it on a piece of paper. But yeah,
Maybe over cocktails before.
there you go. Now you're talking. We'll do a little nap. We'll draw it out on a napkin. So yeah, you're right. In general, your virtual lab is going to seclude those servers, and it's going to do an instant recovery of them within a sandbox. And it's going to allow you to access into it through a virtual appliance that's actually a router. So from the outside, you go through the router to get in, and from the inside, it can only get out through that router, and it NATs everything between it. So that's basically how it does it in a very small nutshell. We can talk about it more at length. So we also have the ability to do what we call Veeam Exchange Explorer. So Veeam Exchange Explorer, we're going to do a recovery, and before you start, anybody got a stopwatch? All right, I've got one. So ready? This is going to be an item level recovery from an Exchange server that we backed up as an image level backup with no agent. Go. So we're going to select the Exchange server. We're going to do a file level recovery of the Exchange server. So a file level recovery, this is what it looks like if you go in and grab an individual file or individual folder and restore that back to your original location. So we're using the same technology basically to allow us to browse that Exchange server. So now that I've got the Exchange server browse up, you'll notice that there's go for it, you're on the timer.
Yes.
You'll notice that there's an Exchange item level recovery on my file level browse. So what that does is actually launches Veeam Explorer. It's going to go out, it's going to run through that browse and find the Exchange database or databases. It's going to open those databases up. It's behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the bottom right there, you can get it. Right there, that one, yep. It's going to open that database up,
We're on the clock.
and it's going to allow you to go in to your inbox, your calendar, wherever it may be, grab an individual item, and send it anywhere. So that is 1 minute and 5 seconds. I dare you to do that with any other product that can restore Exchange. Now it's going to take me a week to figure out how to reset my watch. So again, item level recovery for Exchange, restore an individual mail message, a calendar item, contacts. How many times have you synced your contacts to some other application and lost them all? Yes.
How long is the backup?
So the backup to accomplish this restore is actually an image-based backup at the block level. So the first time you do your Exchange server, if it's 500 gigs, it's going to take it however long it takes it to back up 500 gigs. Going forward after that, you're going to do incrementals at a block level. So it's only going to grab the change blocks based on change block tracking. So the backups are very fast.
And it stays that way doing incrementals forever?
It can.
Okay.
It can. Yeah, I mean, best practices are occasionally you do a new, occasionally you'll set it like once a month, once a quarter, you'll do a new full backup. Yeah. But you don't have to. It's going to do incrementals. It's going to take those incrementals and build synthetic fulls. So you always have a full backup, but it depends on if you want to do an active full backup again or not.
Did you want me to bring up like a backup report and show the first poll and then the incrementals or anything?
You can if you want.
I don't know how big yours is.
That important point, it saves a lot of storage, right? So first of all, we're going to compress and dedupe your backup. So if you have a terabyte, it's going to go down to 250 gigs or less because we usually get 4 to 1. On top of that, you're going to do incrementals going forward at a block level. So potentially, I only have to have one full backup ever, and then I'll have small block level changes stored along with that for the number of recovery points I want.
And then
So
you can do synthetic fulls to tape for archival.
So to get to tape, you're going to want to use your legacy tape software, whatever that may be. Our files just look like regular Windows files, so they're SMB-based files. So they're whatever your backup job is .vbk. You just take those VBK files and the VRB and VIB files that we laid down, and you just copy those off to tape for a long time archival. Yeah. So, but we can keep multiple recovery points. So you can say I want to keep on disk 30 days worth. It's going to be one full backup and 29, small incrementals. So yeah, you're right. You can get a lot of information on disk that way. Yes.
If I have a dedupe storage device as my target, can I turn it off within Exchange?
Absolutely. Yep. You can turn off the dedupe and compression, and we actually have a white papers for almost all those devices that tell you like what we recommend as best practices, whether you use dedupe or not. In some cases, you'll actually leave the dedupe on so that when it traverses your infrastructure, it doesn't eat up a lot of resources because it's going to be minimized. And then when it gets to the other end, we'll undedupe it, and you can put it on your device and let it do all the work on that side. So it really depends, but we have white papers for all of those. Yep.
So in 6.1, you changed your approach to application backup and restore, right? No?
We added the Exchange Explorer, yes. So UAir is still the same.
Okay, so if I want to restore the application, I have to restore it into the lab, right?
The virtual lab, right? Yep.
Virtual lab. Okay, so it didn't change, right?
Except for Exchange. So that Exchange restore we just did, that's outside of UAir.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
if I want to restore SQL Server or domain controller, I have to restore it into the lab, right?
Correct. Right. So you would use a virtual lab. Yep.
Now, another question I want to ask you. You have this VSS-based backup, right?
Correct.
Keep asking your engineers. You probably know this, right? I don't know. Guys, I back up SQL Server. I say VSS, and everything is going under the hood. I cannot even go to your log file and say, yes, the backup was good, because I used to do all DBA stuff in my organization. Now they hired DBA, and she came and okay, you back up this server. Did it back up correctly? I said, I don't know. Okay, I called Veeam. I talked to your engineer. They said, guys, is there a point in your log which says, yes, database 1, database 2, database 3 were backed up correct, like we now transaction logs, everything is fine. They said, no, it's under the hood. And this is what I don't understand. Is it so hard to put it over there? To tell us, okay, I backed up this, and that. Because I don't know. I don't know. The only way to check it is to restore it. Yes, it's like that. I agree. But still, we have bureaucrats over there, and they keep asking us, guys, show us. And I can't show it. And speaking about Exchange, by the way, it's very nice. The only problem is we stopped backing up Exchange with Veeam. Not because Veeam is bad, but because snapshot.
VSS?
Yes. It just killed Exchange. We were without Exchange for 5 hours because after we backed it up, something happened with snapshot and we had to remove it manually. And we called VMware, they said, it is what it is. And you're sitting and answering the calls, yes guys, we're removing snapshot. Half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours.
We actually had one of our customers that they redesigned their Exchange deployment based on the fact that the VSS shadow copy and the VMware snapshots required it. So it wasn't, and again, when we do VSS, we're just making the call. When we do the VMware snapshots, we're just making the call. If the environment can't handle it, it's not going to be able to handle it. Right.
Because that's the only way you use
Yep.
their technology,
Yep.
which they provide.
So on the SQL side, I mean, my thought.
Okay, can I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
If I don't use VSS to back up Exchange, does it mean that the burden will be less on the snapshot side?
If you don't use VSS to back it up, you might get a good copy, you might not. I would not recommend it.
That's what you guys keep telling me.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a crash consistent copy, which is.
Yeah, but I figured it out that, VSS puts more burden on that one, and you risk.
Yes, yep.
You risk ending up with a situation like that. And we had a situation not only with Exchange, but with a couple of SQL servers. Imagine emergency room in the hospital which doesn't work for 3 hours.
Yeah, that's not good.
Because we're removing snapshots.
Yep. So on the SQL side, because we're doing an image-based backup, we're dependent on VSS for whatever VSS can tell us as a reporting mechanism. That's the only way we're going to see into the application to see what happens. So we're curious if maybe that's why.
Yeah, I mean,
VSS may not tell
Is
us.
it possible just to add something in the report because, I know that they back it up. I know
Right.
that they report me, okay, yeah, everything is fine. It should be fine.
Yeah. So we're going to tell
But
you.
again,
So
I have
yeah.
a database to back up.
Yep.
I want to know that yes, we went to this to each of the database and we backed it up. And we're not.
So they're constantly reviewing enhancement requests and implementing anything that makes sense that they can do, obviously. So
Yeah.
again, it would be, we can put in
Yeah, I'm
a
just,
feature
I
request.
told them about it.
Yeah.
It's
So then
not
if you told them, it's already on the list. So it's going to be in the list, and if they can possibly do it,
Okay.
then it'll happen, based on priorities. Yes.
Wouldn't that be the trade-off between agent and agentless?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you want to put an agent on that box and manage an agent, and you asked earlier, how long does that Exchange item level backup take? If you put an agent on there, you're still going to do MAPI today. There's no other way to do it. So that MAPI-based, agent-based backup is going to take eons for the size that databases are today. You're getting, 2 to 4 gig an hour on a... Well, there you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not a, it's not a rip and replace necessarily. This stuff can be complementary. So if,
I've got several.
yep.
I'd like to get it done with one, but until one has them all.
Right. And hopefully they'll clean up VSS and they'll clean up the snapshots and, all that'll continue to get better as we go forward. But yeah, great questions, folks. So any other questions? Is there anything else you'd love to see? Yes.
Question. Can you say a couple of words about proxy? What's the role? I mean, it's some part of your application which,
Yep.
it does something, but what exactly?
So the way the architecture looks is you have the backup server, which is the brains of the operation, if you will. So that's going to do your administration, your licensing, your scheduling. It's going to maintain all the history of your jobs. The proxy server is the brawn or the muscle of the operation. That's actually going to grab the data from the source, compress it, dedupe it potentially, and move it out to whatever your target is. So it's actually the data mover.
Okay, I see.
Yep.
Data mover.
Yep.
Okay, I got it.
Yep,
Thank you.
no problem. Anything else?
The incremental,
Yep.
like 30 days incremental. We'll just take everything, replace everything. Go back up, or how does that work?
So basically if you have a backup in multiple incrementals, we're going to look through the backups and just pull the blocks that we need. So it's even better than that. It's not going to say, okay, you want day 15, you've got to play the full and then incremental 1, incremental 2, incremental 3. No, it just looks at the data that it has available, and it pulls out the blocks that it needs to rebuild it at day 15. So whatever those blocks are across that, 15 days of recovery points, it just pulls the ones that it needs to create that new full background. So it does optimize that recovery process. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. That's a concept that I haven't ran into in ages, and somebody the other day was saying, oh yeah, that's the way you guys do it. No, it's not. Yeah, you can do reverse incrementals or you can do forward incrementals. We can handle both. So it depends on your environment and how you want to scale it out.
So, can you, tell the difference, I mean, from point of environment view? Because we use reverse, I figured it out probably better way, but, you support the traditional one, I mean, in which case?
So there's several factors. If you can do a reverse incremental to disk and you're not going to move it from disk and you're not going to potentially replicate it, then reverse incremental is awesome, right? Because, well, the third piece of it is if your disk can handle rewriting the data every day.
Yeah.
So with reverse incremental, we write a full. The next day we take the changes from the change blocks, we apply it to the full, so we rewrite the full, and then we take the changes from that and we put them into a small file. And we keep going forward like that, always rewriting the full backup. Now, if you're taking that full backup every day and you're copying it off to tape, you're always copying the biggest file. So that may be a reason not to use reverse incrementals. In that situation, we can do regular incrementals. So you do a full, and you do incremental 1, incremental 2, incremental 3. At the end of the week, you're going to take those and roll them up to a synthetic full, and you're going to either keep those incrementals going forward or you're going to turn them into rollbacks. So you have options to do either one. So in that scenario, now I'm going to do a full backup. I'm going to copy it off to tape, and then each day after that, I'm going to do just the changes will get written to tape. So again, it just depends on the environment and what you're trying to accomplish.
Basically about media we use, right?
It's about the media. Yep, sure is. Anything else?
And naturally, if you do incremental, I mean, let's say, I want 3 copies, right? It makes a full and then 2 incrementals, right?
If you're keeping 3 recovery points, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And it usually takes much faster to take incremental, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to keep, there's a lot to be said for keeping fewer recovery points as long as you can meet your recovery window, right? If I need to get things from up to 2 weeks ago or up to a month ago, it's easier if I keep that on disk.
But the only way to regulate how, how you want to do, I mean, how often do you want to do a full backup? It's just, if you say 5, keep 5, it will automatically decide for you, right? You make 1 full and the rest will be incremental, right? Until the cycle repeats, right?
Right, it's going to do a full synthetic full backup once a week, actually. Yeah.
So, synthetic, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All righty, anything else? So is this format okay? You like this better or worse than PowerPoints? We can switch back to PowerPoints if you want. Excellent. Well, I hope you got some good information out of this and appreciate you guys coming by for the afternoon.